Welcome to our Lunchtime Live program on WJEJ, a partnership with Washington County Public Schools. The third Thursday each month is when we check in and do updates about various levels of business in the public school system here in Washington County. Sometimes we go well beyond that, but today we'll focus on a number of issues as we get into the late fall and the winter seasons. We always like to talk with Barb Scotto, our supervisor of transportation, about winter weather and school bus travel and all of that. Richard Wright joins Barb as our communications officer in Washington County Public Schools to talk about many, many things in our office on the day-to-day. Welcome to the both of you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Barb, how about just give us a run through the start of the school year in the transportation department. How have these opening weeks, this month and a half or beyond, how have they gone in your office?
Really well, in our opinion. Mm-hmm. We have had really good success with filling the bus routes, even though we're actively recruiting bus drivers every day and will continue to do so. We've had good success with getting students to school on time each day and getting students home at the end of the day safely. We have a really impeccable safety record when it comes to the delivery of students, accident records. You know, our biggest thing is a mirror bump here and there, but we have a very, very good safety record in terms of our buses.
How many days do you give yourselves, so to speak, at the start of a school year, just to get through the openings, making sure that everybody's there have to be an extra couple of minutes at the very start of the year. How do you start from day one expecting to be right on time, or is there a little bit of a sort of a phase in that you accommodate new students, new routes, etc.?
That's a really good point, and we try to make that very clear to all the schools. You cannot expect buses to be at every single school on time. First-tier schools have it made. The buses line up there, they're ready to get students, and off they go. But particularly for elementary school students, they are of a tender age. We handle them with much more care. So it takes a little bit of time at the beginning of the school year to identify them, make sure they get to the right buses, for them to learn the daily process and get on the correct bus. So it does, each elementary school that we serve causes a little bit of a delay to the next tier and the next tier and the next tier. And for anybody that might not understand what that tier is, you know, our buses don't go out and provide service to students to just one school. We have buses and drivers that provide service to up to 5 schools in a given morning or afternoon.
Is getting on a school bus universal, whether it's here or anywhere else? If somebody has come into Washington County and that child or the children from that family are riding the bus this year for the first time in Washington County, are they experiencing anything different when they work up a schedule with your office and then get on the bus at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day? Is it any different experience here than anywhere else?
I don't really think so. I think that school bus safety and the big yellow school bus is very general from state to state across the nation. You know, you can't have red school buses in one state and orange school buses in another state. It's a universal school bus yellow. The danger zones around a school bus are the same. The statistics and the specifications under which a school bus is built is federally controlled. There's a Congress that happens every 5 years for professionals across the nation to sit down and hammer out what are the best specifications for school buses. What safety equipment can we add to a school bus to enhance the safety of students, the safety of driver, to make the bus even more noticeable than it already is. So I think in that regard, it's very generic, so to speak. But there's a process, and the way each school district does things can vary as far as new people coming into the system.
We're doing the show right in the middle of School Bus Safety Week. What is it that we do here? There's obviously an incredible concentration and focus on the safety of students and the community, other drivers. Everybody plays a part together in getting kids to and from school safely. What is it that we focus on here that makes it a safe experience all across the county?
There are a lot of components to School Bus Safety Week, but I have to say that we practice school bus safety every single day. It is a special week. It's when we can take some very specific time and recognize the job that bus drivers do every day and recognize the roles of schools, parents, motorists, and what their actions, how their actions impact school bus safety. I know that a lot of people get perturbed, if that's a good word, when they get behind a school bus and they're on the way to work and maybe they're running a few minutes late and the bus starts making stops and it delays them that much more. And I would only very gently suggest that it's our expectation that school bus is going to be at the same place at the same time every single day. So I would gently suggest that if that's happening to you on a regular basis, that you make an adjustment to your schedule, because we try to make sure that we're on schedule, as often as we can. There are elements that come into play that are completely out of our control. A working fire, an accident, weather. So many things can happen that can cause the bus to be delayed, on occasion. But ultimately, our schedule is going to remain the same every single day. So if you're rushing out of your driveway every morning and hitting the back of the big yellow bus, not literally hitting.
Right, we hope not.
Certainly hope not. But getting behind a bus, you might want to leave a few minutes earlier or a few minutes later to avoid that, so that it's not a deterrent for you.
This is not a new subject. Tell us about the training and the recurring work that bus drivers in your department will do, to make sure all of the folks working for your department are up to date, not only on safety related issues, but all the rest of it that goes with the responsibility that a school bus driver has.
Well, I have to say again that safety is our number one priority. And so from the very beginning, there are very, very strict requirements for individuals to become school bus drivers. An individual that wants to be a school bus driver and becomes a school bus driver and wants to remain a school bus driver has to meet licensing requirements, physical examination requirements, has to be part of a drug and alcohol testing program, ongoing, it never stops. They have to have a clean driving record when they start, and they have to maintain a clean driving record, not only in that school bus, but in their personal vehicle. So there's a lot of strict requirements that they have to meet. On top of that, they have to be a psychologist, a parent, a mentor, a disciplinarian, all of those things. And the expectations of the school bus driver are huge on the part of the community, on parents. I mean, they're taking custodial, care of their children and putting them on this big bus and hoping that everything goes well, and there's all these other students, and the driver is tasked with safely operating that huge vehicle, being very dedicated to the attention of the traffic and the people stopped around them, but at the same time trying to manage and be aware of all the activity that's going on behind them, in the back of their head. And the last time I checked, having eyes in the back of your head wasn't a requirement to be a bus driver.
Right.
But that's a skill that they need.
Necessary.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what would you say to a driver candidate, a prospect who may be able to help out the department, may be the best driver, may have all the technical skills, may be perfectly able to operate a big vehicle like that, but is either intimidated or is really wary about the psychology part of it, about transporting a bus full of young people of whatever age or of all ages on the day-to-day? What is it about that part of it that there's no training for that part of it, if I'm correct?
We try to provide training that gives you some tools to work with. Mm-hmm. If you see this, you do this. Okay. If you hear this, you do this. And here are the actions that you can take. But all the training in the world can't be out there when that one thing happens, and you have to be able to make a decision right on the spot. You have to decide, do I stop the bus? Do I keep going? How do I handle this? I've got 50 students riding on this bus with me, and there's cars parked on both sides of this road. I really don't have a place to pull over. Now what do I do? Who do I report this to? I talk to every single class, and I don't sugarcoat it, and I can't sugarcoat it, that it is a very challenging job. It's a job that goes with a lot of responsibility, and you do have to have a sixth sense. You have to have those little flags that go up that say, this is not right. This is something I need to talk to someone about. You have to know when to cut your losses and not zero in on a particular behavior. Sometimes less is more. And if you don't focus on one behavior that might be a little on the annoying side and focus on more of the positive behaviors that are happening, on the bus with students, and recognize those, you might draw everybody else in. So those are the kinds of talks that I have with people who are interested in becoming school bus drivers.
Do you and your staff have regular communication with school-based administrators and staff related to the kids who are going to their schools who are on your buses for at least a small part of the day? How does that interaction go, whether based on just general population or in specific instances?
We talk with school administrators every single day, multiple times a day. It just depends on the activity level. And we have a lot of tools and a lot of resources available to us. We have GPS on our buses. So, it's really good for us to be able to say to a parent who is genuinely concerned about the sound of that big diesel engine, we can very specifically tell you that bus was going this speed or that speed, or or a parent who is concerned that the bus did not stop at their student stop. We have the tools to be able to look at that. That's 24/7 GPS that tells us the bus did stop, its red lights came on, its stop arm deployed, and it happened at this time. And that's, given cell towers and signals, within a couple of second window. We also have video surveillance on all of our buses. So we are able to confirm or kind of knock down that allegation that something happened on the bus. And it's really difficult because children perceive things in many different ways, and they see something, they hear something, an adult says something to them. By the time they've interpreted it and they get off the bus, and it becomes more of an emotional thing, and they try to relate that and communicate that to their parent, and it might be slightly different than what really happened or the intent. And we all as adults have to filter through those things. So we can go back to the video and we can look at that and say, this is exactly what was said, how it was said. There was no ill intent. So we are able to give parents the support that they need, that, there might be a perception, or maybe, a child's feelings were hurt, when they were on the bus, but there was no aggression, there was no anger, there was just a clear-cut direction given. I think that was a little long-winded, but I want people to understand how hard we work and how hard we work with the drivers to support them and certainly defend them if they are in the right. And yet, at the same time, our drivers are human beings just like the rest of us. At some point, somebody's patience are going to get a little thin, and we deal with that too. And we constantly train. We have required training. We have large group training. We bring in outside sources to help support drivers in their approach and giving them more skills to work with students on a daily basis. Most of our drivers, they haven't come from a college background when they've had opportunities to do psychology and study behaviors at great length. They're moms and dads and firefighters and retirees. Those are people that are coming because they really do have an interest in working with kids, but they really need to be supported on an ongoing basis for all the challenges that they face on that bus out there every day alone, making split decisions.
This is Lunchtime Live on WJEJ, a partnership the third Thursday each month with Washington County Public Schools. Barb Scotto is our supervisor of transportation, and Richard Wright, our communications officer. It's a little premature to talk about bad weather, but you can almost never get too far ahead of the issue, Richard, when it comes to preparing not only an entire school system, but individual staff, parents, neighborhoods. We do a lot in our office to get ready.
Absolutely, and it's great that I'm here with Barb today because we just had a very large meeting to talk about the process moving forward. As everyone listening, I'm sure knows, Dr. Michael is our new superintendent officially as of July 1st, and he was very involved in that process for many, many years, and we have a new person in that role now, and so we gathered and did our usual conversation. We have some new players at the table, but it's a process we take extremely seriously, and it is one of the most challenging things that we probably do in terms of communicating to parents, because these things often happen late at night, early in the morning. People have their routines and they're going places, and we've really tried to find the best ways to communicate as quickly and early as possible when it comes to delays and weather. And of course, we watch and study the weather very closely. We know there are probably weather junkies out there listening now that know that there's a possible La Nina effect coming this year, which might bring us more moisture. These are things that we're already thinking about. And we have an interesting county. Barb and I have talked a lot over the years. We have this Hancock and Cascade area that we can define as a delay or closing, but in the last couple of years, South County has been a bigger challenge for us. And so we are studying ways to accommodate all the different areas and geography of our county. And we already at this point have certain roads that we have personal relationships with the people who live on those roads, and we can call them and just simply say, our buses are not going to make it to you today. Sorry. So it's become, you asked Barb earlier, I have to comment about how the year opened up. And this is my 10th opening. And I have to say, each year we get less and less phone calls, confusion, concern. A lot of it has to do with the technology that we all have now. In addition to all the preparation that goes into it, we have ways to communicate with parents that we've never had before. We've been able to contact busloads of parents, so to speak, when a bus is running late or it's broken down or whatever it might be. But we're doing that with great ease and efficiency now. Of course, social media helps us mostly. It sometimes hurts only because of misperception and rumor and such, but it's really has just gotten, I don't know if people have just gotten accustomed to the patterns that we have, and I just feel like we prepare earlier and earlier every year. So I noticed that we get a lot less phone calls coming to our office with confusion and concern, and I think a lot of that has to do with all the tools that we've deployed. And I know there are other things that we don't even know that are being created right now. We'll just continue to make that easier and easier. I know that there are school systems in the nation that have GPS apps where parents can see if they're 6 minutes away, are they going to make the bus or not? And they can determine at that point whether they need to drive their child to school or not based on where the bus is on the road. And I certainly can see that for our future as well. But yeah, going back to the question, we certainly are preparing already. And, if I could just jump in, one of the new things that we added at the beginning of the school year was our WCPS app for not just for parents and students, but also for the community. Now, for the community at large, the app is going to basically be a resource for social media and other news that we push out, through our website and our social media outlets. But probably the most important part for a citizen who wants to stay on top of emergencies and other announcements that we make, this is the way for you to get that snow delay or closing. If you're the great aunt of a child and you're the backup to the backup babysitter, this is an app that we strongly recommend that you download, because if you have your push notifications turned on, we're going to be using that this year for the first time as one other thing that we do for snow delays and closings and other weather. It's not always just snow. Sometimes we do have floods and power outages and things that we'll be using that for. So we're really excited about that. We had a couple of glitches early on in the process, not for that part of it, but how parents were getting student information. I believe we worked all that out, and the app is a fantastic tool. We're not going away from our website or our direct communication through our Connect 5 system or all the other things that we have. This is just one more embellishment to our communications processes.
Well, and starting the day, there were, I think, over 13,200 downloads of that. So it's obviously fell upon some favor here, at this point. And we haven't had, we could work out some things. We could take a look at how people are reacting to it, getting feedback, how, once we got into it, how it looked, how it worked. Prior to that first, delay closing or early dismissal debate, we could do all of that in preparation. And then when it's crunch time, I think we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, and I think it's never too soon for parents and students to start preparing for what might happen. One of the big debates that we always have is whether we're going to call a delay the night before based on a forecast. And we definitely go round and round internally on this. And while we understand that would be an advantage for some families, we also don't want to call a delay or a closing and we wake up in the morning and there's nothing on the ground. Out of an abundance of precautions, sometimes we do call a delay. And in the last couple of years, we've done that a handful of times when it seemed fairly clear that there was at least going to be a delay. The point of bringing all that up is I think parents and guardians need to be thinking now, what is the plan? What's the plan for the delay? What's the plan for the close? How are we going to manage that? There's always a possibility that we might go from a delay to a close. And, there are so many variables from our roads departments and the city and county and their ability to stay on top of the snow based on breakdowns of their equipment and how fast the snow is falling, what time it started falling. It isn't just, we are definitely partners with them, but it isn't just us walking out in the morning and deciding whether or not it looks like a good day to delay or close. There are an amazing number of variables that are part of that process.
But between the two of you, and it's a hard environment right now because it's a beautiful sunny early fall day when we're doing the show. But between the two of you who have been involved over I don't know how many years and times, what's the process when there's some question or there's obviously going to be an issue related to weather? What's the process?
Well, I'm going to let Barb go first, but I know she'll skip this part. So I'm going to say the process usually starts with me emailing her fairly early in the morning, the day before I think we're going to have an event, and asking her, what are all of our meteorology services saying about what's going to happen? Right. And I'll let her take it from there.
That's right. It starts long before the snow is actually falling. We start monitoring the weather services that we pay for, plus any other weather forecast we can get our hands on, and we try to put all that together. And most of the time, they're pretty close. There's only sometimes you get a little bit of variance. But we start the day before. We start watching the weather. Well, actually, we start days ahead. And as soon as we see that, next Monday they're calling for flurries or 2 to 3 inches of snow, we start planning then. We're monitoring the weather constantly. I send reports to all of the key people. I start talking to county roads about what their efforts are going to be. My team goes into preparation mode and have a team of 5 people that go out on the roads, and they travel the roads. We can't travel every single road in the county, but we travel key areas that we know, lay in the shade. They're the coldest. They're hills. They're turns where we know that we have problems when we do have falling weather, where ice accumulates, where water runs across and then freezes on the road. It's not just about snow. So they hit the road about 3:30, depending upon what we're looking at. If we're hitting the road on a forecast and it hasn't even started snowing yet, you're just out there driving around and looking at the stars thinking, when's it going to start? And Mother Nature just really likes to have snow fall at about 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what it is, but we can drive all night, and if it's not there, it's not there. And sometimes it just starts snowing at 4:45 or 5 o'clock, and then it's trying to look at that forecast and start covering enough areas to know, is it sticking? What are the road temperatures? What's the air temperature? The temperature normally drops at daybreak. How is that going to impact us? So we talk to other counties, we talk to state police. county roads, state roads. So it's from definitely 3:30 on in the morning. It is quite a flurry of communication with the people that are on the road and with Richard and other key players to come to that decision.
What are depending on the times of day, the time of the weather, first of all, I think most folks would agree that the biggest challenge is, as you outlined, that the precipitation hasn't started. But in general terms, according to all the forecasts, we know it's coming. It's almost like making a decision based on the prediction. What are sort of the magic times, the kind of deadline times where we got to make a decision by this time for this particular move?
Well, as we provide more and more services for students, we're rolling out, earlier and earlier all the time. So we have buses that are leaving our lot to start heading for the first stops at 5:30 in the morning in order to reach students. So our goal is to have an announcement made by 5:30, and most times we're ahead of that, but sometimes in those, okay, it just started, here it comes, now what are we going to do? We might be delayed just a little bit beyond that, but 5:30 is our goal for having an announcement out to the public and parents.
And I'm not certain if it's in policy or regulation or both, but 5:30 decision before 6 a.m. final communication out to all of our outlets and parents and all the things we deploy. But quite honestly, we've been way ahead of that in the last couple of years. I don't think any decision this past year was made after 5 a.m., perhaps maybe a little bit after 5. And by 5:20, we have 3,000 emails sent, 18,000 emails to our staff, 18,000 emails to our parents, a variety of media outlet notifications this year, the app, the website, everything that we do. And by 5:30, if we can have all that completed, it's perfect, I think, for everybody. But as Barb was mentioning, sometimes the weather just doesn't cooperate. We were fairly lucky this past year and able to make some pretty solid decisions in that 5 to 5:30 time frame.
And honestly, the past 2 winters, I believe we've been pretty fortunate for almost in all cases where there have been any number of situations where the decision has been made the evening before because the weather situation has been that obvious. And that's, folks just crow about how great that is. Well, you can't expect that. You can't expect it every time. Mm-hmm. That's what I always tell folks. Folks I know who say, man, that's the best when you guys make the announcement the evening before. Well, it's nearly impossible to do that every time. You just can't predict.
Well, Will, something else I'd like to point out, we're talking so much about the morning call, but every now and then we get that snow that starts after students are in school, and we need to start thinking about whether an early dismissal is going to be a consideration. And, I think it's important that the public and parents understand that once the snow starts falling, it takes time to put everything into place. We have to think about the school building itself, the lunches, the notification to parents, and getting all the buses back in to be able to do something. But even more than that, that's probably the worst time to try to put students back out on the road. The county needs time to be able to go out there and start moving snow. If it's accumulating that fast, they need to be able to treat roads. And it's better if everybody kind of shelters in place. Right. Until there is an opportunity for county roads to do that. And rushing into a decision like that could be more unsafe than having everybody stay where they are, let some time go by, let the county roads do their job, the city, the state police assess what the situation is. So I wanted people to understand that process as well.
For folks who don't know, what's the time frame when it comes to an early dismissal? If we decide or we're leaning toward that, when do we have to make that final decision?
I think the drop dead time is by 10 o'clock, but we usually try to do it more along the lines of 9:30. So that puts a little bit more pressure on because we have to think about pre-K students that are already in school. We have to think about student lunches and that whole process that goes beyond transportation.
Right, because there are some early dismissal, well, to say earlier than other schools. I mean, the first wave of schools that close down for the day is like mid-afternoon. So if you push
2:15 maybe, something like that.
So if you push an early dismissal, I mean, they're getting out pretty early, so we'd have to make a decision pretty quickly.
Correct.
I wanted to add, too, we've talked about all these great tools, the app, Connect 5, all of these ways we communicate with families. The one thing we try to drive home as much as we can, and we did it all summer with families, is double check to make sure that your contact information at your school is up to date. And specifically, look at your emergency contacts, because if you work in D.C. or Baltimore and somebody else is going to be responsible for your child in the event of an early dismissal, for example, we need to make sure we have the right contact names in our system. Therefore, when we send out our text messages and our phone calls, the right people are getting that information. Oftentimes we do get calls, especially in the first couple of calls that we make in the year through our Connect 5 system, that, hey, I didn't get the call. Well, it's probably because the information at your school isn't up to date. The Public Information Office can't update your student's record. That has to be done at the school level. So I always advise people just throughout the year, at some point, just double check. Right. If you haven't heard from us this year, you definitely want to check, because we sent a lot of all parent messages out. So if you're not getting emails from us on a regular basis or phone calls, you might want to double check your student's record.
And I know a lot of schools are proactive about that at their back to school meetings, their meet the teacher nights, those kinds of situations very early or prior to the start of the school year. They're ensuring, I know some folks individually who make sure they have their student roles, their contact information up to date. So if you like you said, if you feel like there's some kind of a question, or you've changed cell phones, your contact network, your job has changed, and now you have different people doing different things about your child or your children at the beginning or end of school days, make sure you let your school know. Final note, Barb.
I have a couple of statistics, and I think it puts things into perspective. Our department transports over 19,000 students every day. And we travel over 3 million miles a year. And our safety record is impeccable with those numbers. We have 200 plus buses and bus drivers out there every day, and they are amazing people. They do a phenomenal job. I would ask the public to think about School Bus Safety Week and take it beyond just today. The theme for School Bus Safety Week this year is Stop on Red. When you see those lights and you see that stop sign, just err on the side of caution, if nothing else, if you're not sure, especially at an intersection, and stop. Because students disembark from a school bus and go a lot of different directions. So the theme is Stop on Red, and make sure that you're contributing to the safety of students every day.
Very good. Richard, final note from your corner?
I just want to encourage families to reach out to our office or to their schools if they have questions about any communications that are going out. Like I said just a minute ago, if you're not getting communications, to find out why. But I think the theme of today is really just to prepare. There have been many years we've had Halloween snowstorms, so it's not out of the realm of possibilities. In the next week or two, all of a sudden the weather could turn sour, and all of a sudden we're dealing with some snow on the ground.
Well, I get the final shot because I'm going to burn you in a big way. This is from the guy who roots for big time snow. Roots for the big storm every now and then.
I like snow.
Which goes completely against common sense in all of our operations here. That's fine though. That's fine. We'll see how winter goes for us.
Yes.
Thank you both very much. Barb Scotto is our supervisor of transportation. Richard Wright, our communications officer, as we talk about the upcoming seasons for Washington County Public Schools. We're here the third Thursday of the month, a partnership with WJEJ.